Welcome, everyone, to today's Town of Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The date is September 14th, 2023. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31st, 2025. This meeting of the Chatham ZBA is being conducted in person and also via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the number 1-508-945-4410. Then you have to punch in the ID number for the conference, which is 301-777-751, and hit the pound. Or you can join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue or hearing or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. To authorize this hybrid form of meeting, I'll have a roll call of all members. Please state your name and whether you agree or not. We'll start with Ginny.
Virginia Fenwick, I agree.
Lee Hovey, I agree.
Paul C. Semple, I agree.
David S. Nixon, I agree.
Randy Potash, I agree.
David H. Veach, I agree.
Okay, I would ask that any citizens or non-board members participating in the call via the phone, please give us your last name and also the last four digits of your phone number for ID purposes. The way we conduct a meeting is as follows. The hearing notice, whether it be an application or whatever it might be, is read by the lady to my right. This is Sarah B. Clark. She's the PPO for the town. That's Principal Permitting Officer. Following that, we would have a presentation either by the applicant or their representative. Following that, we would ask for anyone who wishes to speak in favor, whether here or on Microsoft Teams, to do so. That's strictly only in favor. Then I would read any and all letters that we received or any kind of correspondence. Then I would ask for anybody, either here or on Microsoft Teams, who wishes to speak either against or has a specific question. This is your opportunity to interject yourself into the meeting. There could very well be some rebuttal testimony after that. Then we'd have board members ask their questions to anyone who was involved in the foregoing. We would then close the meeting, go into deliberation. Deliberation is just the members here unless they interject someone into the conversation. We would then hopefully vote in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. To be successful, you have to get a supermajority. In our case, there are 5 votes, so that means to be successful, you need 4 positive votes. Are there any questions? Okay, I will tell you that voting today on all except for (23-070), the voters are Virginia, Paul, myself, Randy, and Dave. On 23-070, which is a continuation from the last time we met, the voters would be Jenny, Lee, Paul, myself, and Randy. Okay, let's start, Sarah, with, I guess we have some minutes.
I believe we have minutes for the meeting held on August 10th and August 17th. I think I'll move them both at the same time
Okay.
and move to approve the minutes as published.
And I will second.
Okay, we need a vote on that.
Ginny votes yes.
Paul?
All votes yes.
I vote yes.
Randy votes yes.
Veach votes yes.
Okay, that's a unanimous vote. Thank you very much. Okay, first of all, we have a note, and I guess we should read it first. This is 23-035, 52 Homestead. Please, Sarah.
Application number 23-035, David Chu and Laura Tosi, care of William F. Wiley, Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633, Owners of property located at 52 Homestead Lane, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 15C, Block 3, Lot 16. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling and a nonconforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and the construction of a new dwelling. The existing dwelling is nonconforming in that it is located 7.4 feet from the northerly abutter and 4.3 feet from the southerly abutter. The proposed dwelling will be nonconforming in that it will be located 5.3 feet from the northerly abutter and 4.3 feet from the southerly abutter, where a 15-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 704 square feet, 18.8%, and the proposed building coverage is 991 square feet, 26.5%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 3,735 square feet, where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Protective Bylaw. This was continued from May 25th, June 8th, and August 10th for re-advertising.
On August 24th, Sarah received the following email. The 52 Homestead is going to require a complete redesign, and accordingly, I am requesting a further continuance to November 2nd. That's from one William Riley, the attorney for the applicant. Is there any comment on that? Well, I'll comment. You know, when it's a complete redesign like this, I'm really against continuations. And we've already had how many, Sarah?
Three.
You know, you get to a point where it really ought to be withdrawn and redone. And when it's redone, come on for us. But, you know, just to continue and continue, it doesn't make sense to me.
I wondered about that when I was reading, you know, and the reasoning and stuff, so I would go along with that, yeah, sure.
How the others feel?
I think given that it's a complete redesign, it sounds like a new application to me. So I'm inclined to agree with you.
I would agree with you too.
I originally thought November 2nd was so far out, might be okay, but I agree with what's being said, yeah.
You know, it's, the trouble is before you know it's right on top of
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
And we're shutting off spots for
Yeah.
other people who are ready.
Understood, yeah, I agree.
So that would mean we have to deal with this request, which is for a continuance, and we would have to vote no, and then he would have to ask us at another time for withdrawal if he wishes.
I think as long as it's clear that that's not with prejudice, he's certainly free to come back with a different.
Well, here's his
decision.
partner, ready to jump into the abyss. What do you think, Jamie?
If I could just call him if you want to address this later, I'm sure the continuance without, the withdrawal without prejudice is perfectly fine, but I have not heard from him on this particular project at all. so.
Okay, can that be done? Like
I can do it
that?
right now as long as he picks
Yep.
up, yeah.
Why not?
Okay.
All right.
I'll try it.
Okay.
So if you want to take us out of order, then we'll come back.
Yeah, I think we'll go on to Locust Lane.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Okay. So that is 23-063.
Application number 23-063. Jonathan and Alicia Downs, care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owners of property located at 41 Locust Lane, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 15F, Block 45, Lot 53. The applicant seeks a dimensional variance from the requirements of Appendix 2 to allow for the proposed elevated catwalk to be located 7.1 feet from the northerly abutter and 12.1 feet from the southerly abutter, where a 15-foot setback is required. A dimensional variance is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 10, and Section 8D2C of the Protective Bylaw. This was continued from August 10th, 2023.
Mr. Litchfield.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of Jonathan and Alicia Downs. When we were in front of you on August 10th, we discussed the fact that there is a peculiar aspect of our bylaw, which if all of the proposed extension of the catwalk were below the top of the coastal bank, we would not need a variance. And we had our engineer go back, look at the top of the coastal bank. I have filed with Sarah a certified plot plan indicating that all of the proposed or the previously approved extension of the revetment is below the top of the coastal bank. As such, no variance is required. We would ask your permission, please, or your approval of a request to withdraw without prejudice the request for a variance.
Okay, Jay, did you have any reason to comment on this? This,
No, I don't think the variance is
okay,
required.
okay.
I will move to grant the requested withdrawal without prejudice.
And I second.
All right, we need a vote on that, Ginny?
Ginny votes yes.
All vote yes?
Yes.
Beach votes
And
yes.
I vote yes, that's unanimous.
Thank you
Mr.
very much.
Well, I don't see that Mr. Norcross has returned. So we will go on. Sarah, 23-074, please.
Application number 23-074, Catherine Beatty, care of Paul Beatty, care of April Ducott, 5 Sterling Road, Harwich, Mass. 02645. Owners of property located at 242 Stage Harbor Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14C, Block 57A, Lot 6X1. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling in a nonconforming lot via the construction of a pergola. The existing dwelling is nonconforming and it is located 20.3 feet from the road and 7.9 feet from the southerly abutter. The proposed pergola will be nonconforming in that it will be located 20.3 feet from the road where a 40-foot setback is required and 10.3 feet from the southerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The property is nonconforming in that it contains 2 dwellings where there is sufficient land area for 1 dwelling. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 37,705 square feet where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Chatham Protected Bylaw.
Either Mike will do, your choice.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman and ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is April Ducott, Monomoy Home Services. I'm here for Sarah Beatty and Catherine Beatty of 242 Stage Harbor Road. Our request today is to what we consider a small ask to add a landscape feature over an existing brick patio on the front of the house. We understand that it doesn't meet setbacks as the current brick patio does not. We're looking for the pergola to just provide a little bit of shade for the front of the house, a little bit of aesthetic value, and help with some solar gain in that area of the house. We will have to put in some sonotubes just to be able to tie the pergola down per code, and that is why we're here today.
Do you have our list of criteria?
For setbacks.
No, there's 11 or 12 different things depending on what's going on. It's our list of criteria. Presenters, we ask if they go through the criteria
Okay,
and highlight those that are important to their particular project.
okay. I don't have the list in front of me.
So I would suggest you read them one by one and then speak to whether it's something that we need to be informed about in relation to the project.
Okay. All right, so adequacy of the size of the site, including but not limited to the maximum lot or building coverage and setbacks. Is how we understand it, the site coverage is not conforming.
Do you feel it's adequate?
We do feel it's adequate.
Okay, number 2?
Compatibility of the size of the structure with the neighboring properties, we feel that it is compatible. The extent of proposed increase in non-conforming nature of the structure use, we don't believe that it's any more non-conforming than the existing patio that's existing. It's the suitability of the site, including but not limited to impact on neighboring properties of, or on the natural environment, including slopes, vegetation, wetlands, groundwater, water bodies, and storm water runoff. The structure does not have a roof. It's simply a trellis, what we keep on considering a landscape feature. Impact of scale, siting and mass on neighborhood, visual character, including views, vistas, and streetscapes. Again, we think that this fits in with the community and surrounding neighbors, and in fact, add a little bit more to the charm in the area. Compatibility of the proposed use with neighbor uses. It's, I don't think, applicable to this. Adequacy of method of sewage disposal, source of water and drainage, again, not applicable. Impact on traffic flow and safety, no, it's not applicable to that. Not going to add noise or litter to any of the property. Adequacy of utilities and other public services, again, we don't believe that this is applicable to this. Visual impact on the neighborhood and neighboring use of any formula business establishment. Again, we're thinking this is going to increase the visual impact. For those buildings located in the floodplain, which this is not, as defined on the flood insurance rate maps prepared by the National Flood Insurance Program, again, this is not applicable. The extent of lateral expansion proposed, I believe that's pretty much what we're asking for today. The
No,
extent-
you're not exactly in a floodplain.
We are not in a floodplain. Correct, so A and B don't apply. Special permit procedures and criteria,
That's fine.
we don't need to go through
Yep,
these.
no,
Okay,
that's
thank
good.
you.
That's almost like going to a dentist, but I don't mean to have it be painful, but,
No, that's fine, I understand.
okay. All right, would that be your presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anyone here today or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, indicate now you'd like to speak.
I see no one to speak in favor.
All right, I'll read the correspondence first. We have a note from Judith Giorgio. She's the Board of Health agent for the town of Chatham. She writes on September 12th, I have no concerns regarding the pergola. And then we have a note from Christina Bassett. She writes on September 7th, and she's writing for the Historical Commission. Looks like they are just putting up a pergola, and in that case, they do not need to be reviewed by the CHC. And that's the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone in the audience or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak either against this or has a specific question? Now is the time for you to join the conversation if you wish.
I see no one to speak in opposition or with a question.
Okay, we'll have questions from the board. Ginny?
I have no questions.
Lee?
No questions.
Paul?
What's the material that's going to be used for the pergola?
Is a composite material?
Oh, pardon
A
me?
composite,
Okay. And the color?
white.
No other questions?
Randy?
No questions.
Dave?
I have no questions.
No, do I? Paul?
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Need a vote on that, Ginny?
I vote yes.
All votes yes?
Yes.
Veach votes yes.
Okay, deliberation. Lee?
Well, nice job, April. I think it meets all the criteria. I think it will be an attractive feature. So if I were voting, I would vote yes.
Paul?
I think there's very little, if any, impact on the neighborhood, and it's clearly not substantially more detrimental, so I will vote in favor.
Randy?
I think it meets all the criteria. You did a good job on the fly. And just so you know, so you don't feel like it was unfair, it was likely in your paperwork that you got, but you probably didn't realize. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I agree with all previous.
Ginny?
And I agree with all previous.
Okay,
I'll move to approve the application as submitted. I don't see a need for any conditions.
I agree.
And I agree. Dave Veach seconds.
All right, we need a vote. Ginny?
Ginny votes yes.
Paul votes yes.
Yes.
And Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. That's a unanimous vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right. I'm sure we'll see you again. Maybe not. Okay, Sarah, let's go on to 23-075, please.
Application number 23-075, Douglas Whitla and Ann Humphrey, 419 Main Street, Medfield, Mass. 02052. Owners of property located at 63 Old Harbor Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14E, Block 55, Lot 34. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the construction of a front porch. The existing dwelling is nonconforming in that it is located 16.2 feet from the road and 2.7 feet from the southerly abutter. The proposed porch will be nonconforming in that it will be located 19.7 feet from the road where a 25-foot setback is required, and 4.5 feet from the southerly abutter where a 15-foot setback is required. The building coverage will remain 1,588 square feet, 12.7%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains a single-family dwelling and a guest house on a 12,552 square foot lot where 40,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. The property is located in the GB3 and R20 zoning districts. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protected bylaw.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. I'm Douglas Whitla, owner of the property and the contractor. We are proposing to do extensive renovation on the house and shifting the front door, and therefore we are reconfiguring the front porch. Right now, the house and the porch are non-conforming, and the setback is 16.2, as you said, from the street, and existing is 2.8 from the side lot. So we are going to remove that porch and add the one, as Sarah just showed you, across the front. And my 12 criteria are so adequacy of size of the site, including but not limited to maximum lot or building coverage setbacks. Our proposal represents no change in building coverage. It is the same square footage as the existing porch. It would improve the setbacks south and east sides. Number 2, compatibility of the size of the proposed structure with the neighboring properties. Our proposal represents no change in size from the existing porch and is similar in size to the other houses on the street. For extent of proposed increase in non-conforming nature of the structure of the use, we're not proposing any increase in the non-conforming nature. The new porch would be less non-conforming than the existing. Suitability of site, including but not limited to impact on neighboring properties or in the natural environment, including slopes, vegetation, wetlands, groundwater, water bodies, stormwater runoff. This proposal change would not impact the natural environment and will positively impact the abutter to the south. And since the porch will be moved away from their property line, that abutter supports this plan. Impact of scale, siting, mass, sitting and mass on neighborhood, visual character, including views and vistas. Chatham Historical Commission has already viewed this plan, accepted it, and we believe the change will enhance the visual character of the house from the street. Compatibility of the proposed use with neighboring home uses, we do not propose any change of use. Adequacy of method of sewage disposal, source water, all utilities are in place. Proposed porch will not impact this. Impact on traffic flow and safety, no impact, NA. Noise and litter, no impact. Adequacy of utilities, no impact. Visual impact on the neighborhood and neighboring uses of any formula business establishment. Again, we think this change will have a positive impact on the look of the neighborhood, and both the Historic Commission and neighbors agree. For those dwellings located NA, we're not in the floodplain.
Thank you.
You bet.
Is there anyone here today or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, indicate you'd like to join the conversation, please.
I see no one to speak in favor.
I'll read the correspondence. First, we have a note from Judith Giorgio. She writes on September 12th, I have no issues with this application. The property is on sewer and the deck is acceptable. And Christina Bassett writes on September 8th for the Historic Commission. She says the CHC heard this application on February 21st, 2023, and they found the home to be historically significant, but did not impose any demolition delay. And then we have an email. This is from Michael J. Ryan, who's the master at St. Martin's Lodge, 52 Old Harbor Road. He writes on September 11th, St. Martin's Lodge is a neighbor directly across the street from 63. I have reviewed the plan of the renovation proposed by the property owners. I am writing to state that St. Martin's Lodge has no objections or concerns regarding the design or the scope of the proposed improvements. In fact, I believe the renovation will further enhance the beauty and historical appearance of the home and will blend nicely with other properties along Old Harbor Road. Then we have an email. This is from Stephen McCarthy. He writes on August 29th, I'm the immediate abutter. We have seen the plans and we think they are wonderful. Everybody should have a porch like that. Thank you for your time. And Stephen lives at 57 Old Harbor Road. That's the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone here on Microsoft Teams that has a specific question or wishes to speak against? Now's the time to interject yourself in the conversation.
There's no one with a question or opposition.
Okay, we'll have questions from the board. Randy?
I have no questions.
I have no questions, Dave.
I have no questions.
No questions.
No questions. I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Need a vote? Ginny?
I vote yes.
Paul?
All votes yes.
Yes,
Veach votes yes.
Also a vote yes. Deliberations. Dave each.
This proposal is certainly in keeping with the neighborhood. It's not, it's an improvement in the appearance, in my judgment. And so it's not substantially more detrimental in any way, shape, or form. It meets all of our criteria and happily support it.
Ginny?
I echo that. I did watch the historic hearing on the 21st, and I echo a couple of the comments that they made, two in particular. The rear house, they noted, that you had previously done that, and when I went to the site visit, I saw that. It's absolutely beautiful. And also, they said, thank you for saving it, and I just wanted to say that as well. Agree with Mr. Veach, it's an improvement, and it satisfies our criteria and is not more detrimental.
Lee?
I agree with all previous comments. It's a great project.
Paul?
Yes, I think the site is greatly improved from when we originally went out there back a few months ago for your initial special permit. Really is, it looks very good. And I agree with the master at St. Martin's that it fits into the neighborhood very well. I hate to disagree with masters, they have a tendency to be, yes. So I'm going to vote favorably.
Randy?
I have nothing to add. I agree with everybody. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
I think we did
We
that.
did.
Did we do that already? All right.
But you can make a motion for the entire project if you like.
I would do that. I move to approve the application as submitted. Am I correct in thinking that your construction vehicles and so forth would be contained on site?
They were, but they're also, they allowed us to park across the street at St. Martin's.
Okay. Then I would move to approve the application as submitted with the condition that construction vehicles and workers be either contained on site or on neighboring properties with permission of the owners.
Dave Veach seconds.
Okay. Ginny?
Ginny votes yes.
All votes yes?
Randy votes yes.
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. That's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Let's see. Jamie, have you returned with an answer for us on Homestead?
On behalf of the applicants, we'd ask to withdraw without prejudice, please.
Okay. And that's withdrawing the first.
The application itself, yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I'll move to grant the request to withdraw the application without prejudice.
And Dave Veach seconds.
We'll have a vote on that, Ginny?
Ginny votes yes.
All vote yes?
Yes,
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you very much, Jamie. That's a unanimous decision. Okay. 23-076, please, Sarah.
Application number 23-076, Judith and David Doino, 30 Mount Vernon Street, Boston, Mass. 02108. Owners of property located at 186 Strong Island Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 13M, Block 45, Lot C48. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the replacement and reconfiguration of decks and stairs. The existing dwelling is nonconforming in that it is located 16.1 feet from the easterly abutter, where a 25-foot setback is required, and within the Coastal Conservancy District. The proposed replacement deck and stairs will be nonconforming in that they will be located within the Coastal Conservancy District, where a 50-foot setback is required. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 29,075 square feet, where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Protective Bylaw.
Welcome. Please
Thank you.
introduce yourself.
My name is David Doino, and I'm the applicant and the builder. We have a house that's getting long in the tooth, and the decks and windows and everything else need to be updated. We are proposing a slight change to our deck that's facing the water. Just trying to sort out some architectural aspects of the house. We want to flatten the front of the rounded deck and relocate the stairs over to the right of the house. It has, we're not cutting any trees, we're not changing the driveway, this has no effect on traffic. We're not changing any of our impervious surfaces or the amount of hardscape at the property, and we're not changing our building coverage. There is a small increase in the absolute square footage of the deck by plus 35 square feet or so. So we do believe that this is adequate for the site, and does not have an effect on building coverage or setbacks. Yes, this is a compatible project for the proposed structure and the neighboring properties. There's this very small proposed increase in the non-conforming nature of the structure. We have no impact on the suitability of the site, we think, including but not limited to the impact on neighboring properties or on the natural environment, including the slopes, vegetations, wetlands, groundwater water bodies, and stormwater runoff. We have no impact, we think, on the scale, siting, or mass of the property and its effect on the neighborhood or its visual character. We believe that this is compatible with the proposed use and the neighboring uses within our neighborhood. We believe there's no change to the adequacy of the method of sewage disposal, a source of water, or drainage. There is no impact on traffic flow or safety, no noise or litter that, other than during the construction period itself. And yes, we do have adequate utilities and public services already to the property. Nothing additional is needed with this project. We do think that this will improve the visual impact of the house for our neighbors and the people that use the beach there at Pleasant Bay. We are in, the floodplain does reach towards this project, but because the expansion of the deck is so limited and it's elevated above the ground already, we don't think it has any deleterious effects on wetlands conservation or the nature that surrounds the property in general. So we are hoping to make an improvement here, and because of the age of things, one way or another, we're going to need to do something with it before it falls apart. So we'd ask for your help. And I'd also like to mention that we do have a Part 2 application to this. There's a side deck that exists now that we're trying to extend, and that will come, you can see it on the drawing here, and that'll come before you at a subsequent meeting.
Also, you're changing the railing, is that correct?
Yes, we have vertical balusters now, and we're planning to do the horizontal wire rails.
Okay. Okay. Is there anyone here today or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? Please let us know you'd like to join the meeting.
I see no one to speak in favor.
And I'll read the correspondence. First is from Joe Giorgio, a health agent for the town. She writes, on September 12th, I have no issues or concerns regarding the replacement and relocation of the stairs and decks at this property. The work will not encroach on the septic system. And then we have a note from the Conservation Commission, specifically Conservation Administrative Assistant Crystal Keon. She writes, on September 7th, the Conservation Commission has received an administrative review application that is pending the submission to the ZBA. The project as proposed will be conditioned to meet the performance standards on the Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Local Wetland Bylaw and the regulations promulgated thereunder. That's the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak against this or has a specific question? If so, indicate you'd like to join the conversation.
There is no one to speak in opposition or with a question.
Okay, questions, Jenny?
I have one question. You mentioned the slight increase in the square footage. Is that because of moving the stairs over to the side?
That's part of it, and at the current deck extends from the house 13 feet 6 inches, and in this proposal, the deck will then extend 14 feet exactly. So there's a 6-inch expansion at its furthest point, and as we straighten out that curve, we get little bits of extra square footage
Okay.
at each end.
So I was wondering if you were moving the stairs because of safety. I noticed it's right next to the door. I just thought that might have been one of the reasons. I was curious.
That's one aspect of it, and it does have a really big impact on the flow of people using the deck, trying to use the deck.
Okay.
And also architecturally, we think it's kind of ugly where it is.
Thank you.
Lee?
I was going to ask the same thing about the stairs, just out of curiosity. No other questions.
Thank you.
Paul?
No questions.
No questions.
I have no questions, Dave.
Okay, Paul?
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave, Veach seconds.
Need a vote? Jenny?
I vote yes.
All vote yes?
Yes.
Veach votes yes.
I vote yes. Okay, deliberations. Lee?
Well, I think it looks like a great project. It's definitely not substantially more detrimental, actually. I think it's a nice improvement. And if it's starting to fall apart, then it needs to be replaced.
Well,
Well, going down Strong Island Road reminded me that we recently dealt with Bill Richardson's house there and some work that was being done there. Unfortunately, we've lost him. I also was reminded, I think it may have been 146 I was going by, but the construction vehicles and pickup trucks and so forth on the road there were numerous. I did not go back and look at our conditions on that, but I'd be surprised if we did not have conditions on it that said all construction vehicles and so forth should have been on site or the neighboring property. They certainly were not. But in terms of this particular project, I think it's a dramatic improvement. I think it's certainly not substantially more detrimental.
I agree with everybody.
Yes, I agree too. And you know, in winter storms, it could be kind of a punishing location, so I'm not surprised they're seeking to do some of that work. But no, it's certainly an improvement, and I will support it.
Jenny?
I agree with my colleagues. I think it's a nice improvement, a nice project. Good luck.
I felt badly for your neighbor who had to park his Bentley convertible and his Rolls-Royce sedan under covers. You could certainly allow him to park in your circle to, maybe, I don't know what that good that would do.
We're talking.
It's kind of a thing. Anyway, excellent presentation. Thank you very much. Okay, Paul?
I'll move to approve the application as submitted, but I will add the condition that all construction activity and vehicles should be contained on-site or at a neighboring property with the permission of the property owner, given the location. It's a very tight location.
Yeah.
Right by the beach there.
And Dave Veach seconds.
Okay. Need a vote on that, Ginny?
Ginny votes yes.
All votes yes?
Yes.
Veach votes yes.
I vote yes, that's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I guess we'll see you soon. Okay. Well, now I'm going to change the pace just a little bit. 23-053, please, Sarah.
Application number 23-053, Timothy R. Ryan, care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owners of property located at 299 Cranberry Lane, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 15K, Block 7, Lot 7. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a conforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling, garage, and shed, and the construction of a new dwelling, guest house, and shed. Also proposed is the expansion of the driveway. The existing dwelling is non-conforming in that it is located 25.4 feet from the road and partially within the Coastal Conservancy District. The existing garage is non-conforming in that it is located 22.6 feet from the road and partially within the Coastal Conservancy District. The existing shed is non-conforming in that it is located 6.7 feet from the road and partially within the Coastal Conservancy District. The proposed dwelling will be non-conforming in that it will be located 27.5 feet from the road where a 40-foot setback is required, and 1 foot from the Coastal Conservancy District where a 50-foot setback is required. The proposed guest house will be non-conforming in that it will be located 14 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District where a 50-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 2,740 square feet, 5.9%, and the proposed building coverage is 4,388 square feet, 9.5%, where 10% is the maximum allowed. The lot contains 71,600 square feet in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, Sections 6 and 9, and Sections 5B and 8D2B of the Chatham Protective Bylaw. This was continued from June 22nd, 2023.
Mr. Litchfield.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of the applicants, Kerry Felice, who is in the rear, and Tim Ryan, who could not be here today. With me is Paul Muldoon, our architect, and virtually with us is Thad Eldridge, our engineer. He has a child who brought home a head cold from school, and he thought he wouldn't want to share it with you, so he's here electronically. And I think he and Sarah may be sharing screens or whatever it is that these technological wizards do, but we'll leave that in Sarah's hands. All of you were here back on June 22nd when Paul, Thad, and I made an initial presentation on behalf of Tim and Kerry in regard to their plans to redevelop the home down at the end of 299 Cranberry Lane in North Chatham. At that time, thank you, sir, that's a good place to start, you expressed an understanding of the challenges presented by this property, which, while protected by a revetment, is also faced with floodplain contours on 3 sides. You recognized, of course, that the existing house and the existing garage are both within the Coastal Conservancy District, not just too close, but within. And that our goal was to sensibly retreat from the shoreline within reason and to construct a house that still enjoyed the remarkable views which are available on the site and was at the same time respectful of the site, of the bylaw, and of the neighborhood. You were most helpful and gracious in providing us with guidance as to specific issues that you wanted us to address, and we think, done our best to do so. Since we had already presented the criteria back in June, and you already had a lengthy hearing with several more hearings to go. The chair suggested that I not reiterate the criteria, but instead speak to the responsive changes which were made to your requests, and I'll try to do so. The plan that is up there is perhaps a start. And I don't know, do they have hand copies, or if not?
Not of this document.
Then I will explain what's going on. On the north side of the plan, and it's difficult for you to see, you can see the protrusion, thank you, Sarah, which is the existing house, which goes right up the very top, the portion of the house, that, exactly. Right below there, there is a gray line. That is the extent of the former proposal. And we are now 5 feet 6 inches further back from the revetment. We've come further back from the revetment than where we were before. There were, of course, concerns about the proximity of the house to the top of the bank, and again, we've moved it up 5.5 feet to the south. It is, however, still completely outside of the flood zone. There were some discussions, and your suggestions were not uniform as to whether we should or should not try to be completely out of the flood zone. But we thought it was useful to be completely out of the flood zone. And in fact, we've also voluntarily made it a flood-compliant structure with vents and so forth in recognition that both flood zones change when FEMA changes the map, and also because the potential for flooding probably will increase. We were 28 feet from the revetment, and we're now at its closest point about 33 feet back from it. Unlike the existing house, this proposed house is completely outside of the flood zone and is to be built on the highest portion of the property on the northwest side, yet it's also somewhat nestled into that hillside to the west, which tends to minimize mass. Paul dealt extensively with a floodplain consultant from Woods Hole, was she?
Yes, Shannon Holst. We consulted with Shannon Holst, and we had a general conversation about flood zone compliance and generally where the house could sit. We talked about placing it on the tennis court. We talked about placing it in its current location. We talked about putting it in the flood zone. And there was some discussion and concern about connecting the flood zones and placing the house on the tennis court, which is a lower elevation than our currently proposed location. And connecting the floodplains would be tragic. So we came back to this situation of placing the house in its current location and voluntarily making it flood zone compliant, so we're future protecting the structure.
And that is responsive to some of the suggestions or questions you had about what happens in the years to come. And while we can't control what happens in the years to come, we have designed this house as safely and as appropriately for its location as is possible now and for the reasonably foreseeable future. As we explained in June, some of the contours will be restored to their natural levels, or at least those relating to the existing garage, which is completely within the flood zone. That was built by prior owners, and when they did so, the contours were changed. We're going to restore them to what they were. We've also built up the slab under the house up to 11 feet and added flood vents as mentioned, all of which, again, were responsive to the appropriate questions that you had. We've revised the chimney. Maybe we can go into the elevation, Sarah, of your choice. We've revised the chimney, reducing its height to the minimum required by code, and also adding a copper shroud, which will reduce the mass further. We've developed visuals. Do you have the comparison from the water? And if not, I think Thad may have that sheet. I don't see it there. Thad, could you, Sarah may not have that, and I don't know how the two of you want to coordinate, but there is a visual which Paul has put together, which I think Thad is going to try to get up on screen. I'll come back to that when he does, but it will show to you that the view from Pleasant Bay will be much less of a marked change or intrusive than might have been thought, especially since the westerly wing is now only 1 story. There was a question when you're heading back toward Riders Cove, you wouldn't be able to see much of it anyway, but because it's the wing that goes off to the west, but because it is now only 1 story, it will really not be particularly visible above the vegetation. We also, on the north or Pleasant Bay side, reduced the porch. which is now completely below the overhang from the second floor. Thank you. That is it. That is Paul's best efforts as showing the view from the water that's heading towards Scattery. The existing house is on the bottom, and the proposed house is at the top. When you're heading east, you wouldn't be able to see the wing at all. And I think we may have another version of that, but that gives you the idea. There, thank you. That is full on looking south from Pleasant Bay. Obviously, the existing house is there. It has that portion that comes quite close to the revetment. We're getting rid of that. But the width running east to west, as we discussed last time, is essentially the same, 62 versus 60, or 63 versus 65 feet. And the wing heading to the southwest is not going to be notably visible, not really going to be visible at all from the water. The exterior siding has been further revised to reduce the vertical sheathing, which some neighbors had some concerns about, and we in fact removed more of it. Kerry is a very cooperative neighbor, removed more of it as of yesterday, and if you don't have those plans, Sarah, we'll get them to you. But there's been a slight change in the elevation, just an architectural detail in response to a neighbor's concern. We reduced the mass of the main house, again eliminating the second story above the garage or west side, and reduced from 8 to 2 the number of dormers on the house. We revised the front porch, that on the south side of the house, eliminating the stone bases under the roof posts or supporting pillars. Again, all of these changes are responsive. They are ones which the applicants were entirely willing to make, recognizing your concerns and those of the neighbors. While there was internally some discussion of replacing the viewing station with a cupola, and there had until recently been one available across the street from my office. We decided to forego the cupola, and instead the viewing station or tower has been completely removed, which obviously was a concern of this board. We understood and appreciated your reservations, and that aspect is gone. The chart that I handed out gave the neighborhood comparison numbers, and while the standard is not to compare this to the prior proposal, but instead to what's there now, the footprint is somewhat less than the prior proposal, and the gross floor area and living areas have both been reduced by approximately 400 square feet from what was proposed before. Instead, with a lot of 71,000 square feet, and in a location which is not exactly Main Street or in a highly visible location, the numbers are consistent with what's in the neighborhood. So the scale of the house, the scale and mass of the house have been reduced. The potential for changes in the floodplain and in the floodplain zone have been addressed in what we think is a forward-looking manner, and less global issues such as exterior sheathing, the chimney, and the stone bases under the porch have been dealt with. The viewing tower is gone, and we've come back with what I think you can find is a plan which is responsive to your concerns and those of some of the neighbors, and which is of at least equal, because it's the legal standard, importance, is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. Paul and I, and perhaps Thad, would certainly be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience or on Microsoft Teams who would like to speak in favor of this application? Now is your opportunity to join the conversation.
There's no one to speak in favor.
Okay, correspondence. First, we have a note, this was received on September 13th. It's from Ginny Nickerson of 30 Bittersweet Lane in North Chatham. I would like to oppose the new plans. I believe it's up to the ZBA to follow Chatham's protective bylaws each time a variance is given for the reconstruction and add on or demolition to be rebuilt up and out. The ZBA is helping to change our town of Chatham. Why do we need to be allowing mega houses, which in general are rarely used in a 12-month period of time? Why? The charm of our town is being stripped away with each ZBA approval. I would encourage the ZBA to help protect our town, not to continue to approve these oversized second homes. We have guidelines and bylaws in place. Let's adhere to them. Please, I appreciate your consideration. Then we have a note. This is from Frederick Ecker II, who is the Vice President of Protect Our Past. And this was received on September 14th. As Vice President of POP, I would like to express my opposition to the new plans for 299 Cranberry. Cape Cod, and especially Chatham, was originally discovered by the wealthy at the turn of the 20th century. The allure was the simplicity of the architecture and the seaside culture: hunting, fishing, swimming, beachgoing. The locals also were heavily involved in fishing and the seafood industry. Simple, vernacular homes were constructed to blend with the existing neighborhoods. These second homes were typically outfitted with secondhand furniture and had minimal landscaping, if any. This created a sanctuary of simplicity and peace, leaving behind all the complexities of their full-time homes and communities. Neighborhood by neighborhood, Cape Cod is losing its original charm and quaintness that attracted the original second home owners. The new elite are creating Anywhere USA, that's quote unquote, and destroying the very essence of our community. The proposed design for 299 Cranberry Lane does not have any features that one would see in a vernacular Cape Cod home. It is a monstrous home and more in character with homes found in Newport, Rhode Island, than Cape Cod. When is this going to end? Unfortunately, dollars and greed have overcome common sense. Responsible change is what we need. Please think hard about the future of our community and create and enforce sensible zoning guidelines. Then we have a note. This is from Woody Foster. He writes on September 13th. I have been in contact with the Ryans through their architect, Paul Muldoon, and based on the below modifications to the exterior of the proposed structure, I have no major objections to the proposed project. We have owned 294 Cranberry Lane for over 100 years and look forward to having the Ryan property be Cape-like. We welcome the Ryans as neighbors, and we thank you for your efforts in this regard. All the best, Woody Foster. And that is the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone here or in the audience that wishes to speak either against or has a specific question? If so, now's your chance to join the conversation. The lady in the back. You have to go to the microphone, yes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ellen Briggs and president of Protect Our Past. And, I admire that the changes have been made, but I still want to remind all the board and the community the need to adhere to the unique and charming style of the Cape Cod house. Bigger is not always better, and I think we're seeing too much of that going on all over the Cape, actually. Chatham's not the only one with this challenge. I think what Fred Ecker said speaks very well for what we represent as Protect Our Past. I would just make one change. It reminds me of what you find in the Hamptons. And I've reminded you all before that we are getting the reputation in being called Chahampton. And that is a real concern for me, because that's not why people want the Hamptons and they can go to the Hamptons. But Cape Cod has its unique and really one-of-a-kind style. And we would like you to consider making the adjustments with the power that you have to maintain that unique culture that we love so much in this peninsula. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, either here or on Microsoft Teams, that wishes to speak? Mr. Litchfield, would you like some rebuttal time?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, I think it may be telling that the only letter from anyone in the neighborhood was in support of the proposal. It's always somewhat troubling when people talk about variances when there's no variance being requested. And it's also difficult to hear people suggest that we don't have standards and guidelines. We do. We have a zoning bylaw and a zoning board of appeals, and we have a state law as well. And as you know, The question before you is whether this is substantially more detrimental. It is a little bit troubling to hear generic cavils and name-calling about the Hamptons and the Newport without any specifics. I think the plans that Paul has developed have vernacular, if we want to use that term, have style, have aspects which are appropriate. The decision is up to you, of course, but I think you can find that these changes are responsive to the requests that you have made and that the proposal is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, questions from the board. Paul?
I have no questions.
Randy?
I don't have any questions.
Dave Veach?
I have no questions.
Jenny?
I did not have questions.
No questions.
Okay.
I'll move to,
Deliberations?
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach, seconds.
Need a vote on that, Jenny?
Yeah, I vote yes.
All votes yes?
Yes,
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes, okay. Randy,
so,
deliberations.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So I heard everything from the historic aspect of the argument, and I agree with them a lot of times. But when you look at the streetscape here, we really have seascape. And you did a great job at fixing that up for today compared to last time. I didn't like the seascape last time, none of us did. I think that was pretty unanimous. And now I don't think an argument could be made that this is substantially more detrimental to what's there now, especially when you look at the seascape. And certainly when you think about this particular neighborhood, it's by no means substantially more detrimental, so I support it.
Dave?
Yeah, I particularly want to call out the appropriateness of the response that you brought back. When comparing this to the original proposal that we saw, this is sweet. They really have done a great job with it, and addressed all of our concerns. I also think especially looking at this in respect to what I said to the previous hearing about exposure to the weather and things, that over time, probably having just that one dormer on the windward side, is going to represent much fewer opportunities for water penetration and things like that. And I think everybody will probably be happier all the way down the road. So certainly I'm in agreement with Randy. This is not substantially more detrimental in any way, shape, or form. It's an improvement over what's there. It meets all of our criteria. It meets the standards that we apply, and I think that it's a great project. I'm happy to support it.
Jenny?
I too was struck by the changes. They were really significant, and I want to say thank you to the team, Mr. Litchfield, Mr. Muldoon, the Ryans. It's very evident that you really did listen to the neighbors and to the board. We had a lot of comments at the last hearing, and it's really evident how thoughtful you all were in making these changes. Last time at the hearing, I talked primarily about two things: seascape, as Randy mentioned, and the coastal bank. And the first thing I looked at when I got the new site plan was and I noticed right away, the 33 feet from 28, which is really significant. So I think that's, I want to thank you for that. And also the seascape. It is, as you summarized very well, Mr. Litchfield, it's significant. I did a before and after. I circled the loss of the dormers and the loss of the columns, and it was really, it really emphasized how important the design that you have and the home that the Ryans want. That's what they want, and they're entitled to that. But you listened to the board and you made it more appropriate for that lot in that neighborhood with the prominent seascape that it has up on that hill. Now, I do agree that Mrs. Briggs, I totally agree with the importance of preserving the charm of Chatham, but I think that the homeowners this is what they want. And so on the whole, I think that it's a very big improvement, and I would support it.
Lee?
I echo all my colleagues. I am very pleased with the redesign, especially when it comes to the mass of the building. It's a huge improvement. I think it's very attractive. I think that it's going to be a great house for the Ryans and fit in very, very well with the neighborhood, with other houses, and with the seascape.
Paul?
Yes, I think the board had an extensive discussion that last time hearing, and a number of comments from a number of our members. And when I looked at these plans, I opened them up, and I thought, wow, this is spectacularly better than what was there before. And then looking at the numbers, the 33 and the 28 and the 5-foot difference, and all responsive to comments were made by board members. I think you've done a very good job, and I think it certainly is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Yeah, to me, this is like night and day. But our job is to compare it with what's there now. And that's more than night and day. I mean, it is such an improvement over what's there now, not only from a Cape Cod standpoint, but from use and the way the environment's being treated. I'm very, very pleased, and thank you both. Paul?
I would just ask in terms of conditions, what's the plan in terms of construction, and can you give us some guidance on that, Bill?
If you would bear with me, do we have an approximate construction start time? As soon as possible. As soon as possible, given the fact that we have an acre and 3/4, I don't think there'll be any problem with all vehicles on site or permission of neighbors, if that's the question.
Right. That is, and I'm not sure that I see any point to the June 30th to Labor Day restrictions, although access here is going to have to be planned in some way, I assume.
Cranberry Lane has, from where Salt Marsh branches off, has always been one lane, and we're going to have to deal with that, as does everyone else who lives there. But the contractor will be aware of that and will be reminded.
All right, I will move to approve the application as submitted with the condition that all construction activity and vehicles should be contained on-site or at a neighboring property with the permission of the property owner.
Dave Veach seconds.
I vote yes.
Paul votes yes.
Yes.
Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes, that's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your help.
Okay. Jamie, do you want to flip the two that we have left? I only say that because I don't think the second one's going to take a long time, and there are neighbors here and all that. I mean, it's your call.
Sure, that's fine. That's fine, Mr. Chairman, with that.
Okay. So, Sarah, let's go to 23-070, please.
Application number 23-070, 184 Barcliff LLC, care of James M. Norcross Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owners of property located at 184 Barcliff Avenue, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 15G, Block 20, Lot B1. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and detached garage and the construction of a new dwelling. The existing dwelling is non-conforming in that it is located 21.3 feet from the road. The existing garage is non-conforming in that it is located 4.1 feet from the westerly abutter and 16.2 feet from the northerly abutter, where a 25-foot setback is required. The proposed dwelling will be non-conforming in that it will be located 23.1 feet from the road, where a 40-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 1,503 square feet, 15.2%, and the proposed building coverage is 1,480 square feet, 14.9%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming, and then it contains 9,917 square feet, where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protected bylaw. This was continued from August 24th, 2023.
Good afternoon, Jamie Norcross representing Dan Russell. Dan is here with me this afternoon as well. So we were here at the end of August. The board asked for some changes to the design, primarily the dormer on the front, which you've seen the new plans hopefully for that design. And we've also included a retaining wall on the front right of the property to address concerns for the neighbors relative to prohibiting any parking on that area of the lawn. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. First, I'll see if there's anybody in the audience, either here or on Microsoft Teams, who would like to speak in favor of the new plan. Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak either against the new plan or has a specific question?
Charlene and Bob Whitley, just
Uh-uh.
question, we're going up, okay.
You two are becoming regulars, so you know the drill.
I have my mail sent here. I just-
Yeah, just identify yourselves again, please.
Charlene and Bob Quigley, we're
Yep.
abutters to the property. We
Yep.
live at 15 Mouse Hole Lane. And again, as we mentioned last time, we just want to thank everybody and Dan Russell and especially the zoning board for bringing forward the changes that we feel are pertinent for safety reasons. So my question is, we have not seen the new plan. So could we put that up just to,
Yes.
great, thank you.
Jamie, do you have a copy there that they could just quickly look at?
Here's the hard copy for you guys.
Oh, good.
Here's the
Oh, great, yeah.
If you remember, the question before had to do with the dormer.
Yeah,
And also,
okay. Did you want to mention that, or I don't know? So this is the first time we've seen this, which is great. And thank you so much for putting a hardscape there. I think that's very important, as we discussed, to make sure that the cars don't come down parallel. So mine is a technical question. When you put in for a condition of approval, or a condition for approval, what is to stop a future, so if somebody buys a property, if they want to take the stone wall down, or if they want to remove a hedge, that sort of thing, what prevents that from happening?
nothing. I mean, it's the way it is. Is there any way around that, Sarah?
You could condition it, however, the only way we would enforce if a condition was broken was through the complaint process. So you would have to contact the Community Development Department. We would go out, look at the site, see if changes had been made that violated the conditions. The owners would receive a letter. The board could choose to pull that applicant back in for enforcement of conditions if they didn't comply with them.
But the likelihood of doing it for such, like a hedge or a bush or a stone wall is very slim.
Yeah, I know, and Mr. Chairman and members of the board, thank you. I know on our property, there are conditions that were filed with the deed, and some of them had to do with landscaping as well, and didn't know if these conditions could be applied to this property as well.
Well, a deed's a very different thing. That's moving away from what we do. We don't condition people's deeds, as per se.
Right.
So, I think you take Mr. Russell with the faith that he's going to do these things, and you just hope the next owner agrees. It's a great idea. But
Okay.
beyond that, You'd have to buy it yourself and add it to your collection of homes. And I'm sure Mr. Russell would be happy to discuss that with you. I don't know.
Well,
Okay?
yeah, so, I mean, I guess if you look at it, there's nothing there that's really going to prevent anybody from parking on the right-hand side and obstructing the ability for people entering and exiting Mouse Hole Lane. You know, they can easily
Yeah.
traverse that little piece of wall there and end up parking along
And why
that
would
side.
they?
Yeah.
Really, why would they?
And then the only other thing that I would like to reiterate is something that I mentioned at the very beginning, was the sheer magnitude of the structure itself in comparison to all the other structures that are on Bar Cliff, this being a non-conforming and a much smaller lot than any of the others. It just seems like the magnitude is still there. And that's all I have.
Okay. Well, thank you both very much.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you. Thank all of you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, so we have questions from the board. Where was I? How about, Lee, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Okay, Paul.
I guess the only question that I have is, when I look at the small proposed stone wall, it sort of draws my attention to the fact that the survey has 2 corner bounds found, and I'm a little confused as to what these dotted lines are versus the solid line with respect to the property line on the Mouse Hole Lane side. It looks to me as if a corner bound is found, which the stone wall then goes past onto property which is presumably is theirs or is not theirs.
Without having the benefit of Dave Clark with us, I'm going to assume that's a error on his plan. Let me look at a prior version. Can you answer that? Is that okay?
Yeah, the corner bounds in front of the wall, on the corner. It's
Well,
straight, right in line with the bound on the other side.
I understand it's in front of the wall, but what I'm wondering is,
He's saying
does the
opposite.
property line actually go to
Dark
the
line
right
versus
of that? Because that's where the solid line is, it seems to depict the property bound. But this talks about a corner bound being to the left of that.
Showing. I'm not sure with Dave's plan. I mean, we can, if you want to add a condition that the retaining wall will be on our property, certainly abide by that. I'm not sure the reason for the discrepancy. I'd have to ask Dave Clark for that, the specifics as to why. I agree with you. Usually
I'm trying to figure out whether what he's saying here is that there is a corner bound there, but it's not actually on the property line?
Well, if you look at, and again, there's always a little bit of, surveying isn't always an exact science specifically, but if you look at, there's a corner bound found that's not in line with the top left corner as well.
I know. I mean, it looks to me as if the corner bounds
So I
are
think-
not where the property line
Right,
is.
so on the description of the property, there'd be offsets from the bounds, basically.
I'm sorry?
When you get the description of the property at the registry of deeds,
Yeah.
there'd be a distance off of the corner bound. They have it all the time. It's a very common thing in surveying.
Jay has something to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, the surveyor that put this forward, Donald Poole, stamped these plans.
Yeah.
And the solid lines should be the property
Right,
lines
exactly.
of your property.
Right.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
dashed line represents some previous
Yeah.
line perhaps, where bounds were set at
Cool.
that time.
Right,
But the solid lines are representative of the actual lot.
right.
So the corner bound is not really a corner bound.
Not always.
They
On a
weren't
lot
set,
of,
at-
on a lot of old property, it's not, the sophistication of the surveying is nothing like today, and they can be off. Old property bounds on old properties can be off just by, 6, 8 inches, 10 inches.
if you'll notice on other plans too, especially Thad Eldridge's plans, he'll call out which way the bounds are off on every bound. It's
Yeah.
off in the
Right.
northeast
Yeah.
and southwest directions.
Okay, all right. Well, then, if that's the case, then the stone wall is all on your property, so that answers my question. Thank you.
Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as I said last time, we really appreciate you working with us, and you've really gone above and beyond trying to make changes, and I get the impression that you'll do whatever it takes to make us happy. So I just want to acknowledge that, but we also have to acknowledge that this is a historic neighborhood, and removing a historic house, and I think it's important that we have that simplicity of agriculture. The bylaw, does touch upon, the purpose and intent of the bylaw is to preserve natural and historic assets of the community. So, and the long-term plan of Chatham, showed a very big concern with replacing homes with other homes that don't preserve the character. So I say that when I look at this, it seems like you've made some changes, but they don't necessarily blend. They're changes that were made, but then other things sort of fall to the wayside. And I will say that.
As you
I'll
be more specific, okay.
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to preface it with, so when you look at the, you agreed to put the roof going forward of the shed dormer, but there's a notch there, so it kind of takes away from a classic shed dormer. And I don't think that looks, particularly Cape Cod or historic, because it's kind of a fancy doorway. So there's that. And then there's also the windows on the right-hand side. They're different from all the other windows. So like I said, it looks a little piecemeal, the changes. And I think that it's really important to have, I don't think we're letting perfect be the enemy of good with a location like this. This is all about streetscape. It has, no sidewalk. It's right in the middle of one of the most important streets in Chatham. So I think getting it perfect is a good idea. So what do you say to that notch in those windows?
Well, the notch is a result of the porch, which is extended out from the structure. I think you're also looking at a one-dimensional photograph. I think, or if you saw this as built, I don't think it's going to be as significant, that notch. And you're also looking at it from exactly straight forward, whereas if you're peering it from the side, I think it's got a different dimension that actually adds a bit of a design characteristic to the property and to the house. Again, I think that's obviously a hyper-technical comment that you've made, and I'm not sure, again, that we've addressed a lot of concerns already with this board, and to say, well, that notch creates a detriment to the neighborhood. Seems like a reach to me.
I'm just giving you I didn't say I wasn't gonna support it.
Okay.
I just think, this is an important spot. And I'm sure some of my other colleagues will have something to say about whether or not this is historic-like, or if it's traditional Chatham, if it's Cape Codish or not, because I think it needs to be. And those are my remarks where I think it's somewhat detriment to the neighborhood, because it's kind of an odd-looking house, being quite frank with you.
Well, I mean, I guess beauty's in the eye of the beholder in these
Yeah.
things. I'm not sure odd's a reason to deny a project, though. If in your opinion, that's a very that's a very arbitrary way to make a decision based on that review, I would say. I mean, we were asked, we came here 2 weeks ago, or whatever that was, said, we want the dormer, we put the dormer on. Now people don't like the heck, the windows are a little different. I mean, at some point, I agree with you, perfect would be nice, but I think very few projects are perfect. And we're getting to a degree and to a specificity that I think respectfully is beyond the purview of this board. It's not a design review committee. We're looking at substantially more detrimental or not. And the comments that you're making, while I appreciate them, I think they're more of a sort of a design review.
And
Which doesn't-
I was hesitant to do that, but at the same time, I don't think it's out of our league to talk about design when you're trying to be blended with the neighborhood. And that's, part of the bylaw, to be in sync with the neighborhood. And whether this is in sync with the neighborhood, I think is questionable.
Okay, well, I guess we would disagree on that. I think
Yeah.
scale setting and mass, I think, again, we appreciate the comments from the last meeting. I think we've addressed those comments. And I think this is, I would hope the board we follow their direction, would suggest this is an improvement and something they can support.
Okay, that's it for me.
Hey,
We're in questions, right? I have no questions, Dave.
Jenny?
I don't really have a question, but it's related to Randy's comments. So first, I want to say I recognize that you've done a lot of work to make all these changes. You listened to the board. In our last hearing, you've been here several times. And and definitely adding the eave across does reduce the mass, and that was an important part of the last hearing. And it's an improvement. I guess I didn't totally anticipate that there would be some downstream impacts, which, as Randy pointed out, there are. I preferred the other original doorway that you had. It tied in better to the, but I do have to say, agree, Jamie, that this is getting really, it's more preference-oriented. And I think that the overall goal of this house was to reduce the height, which we did, you did, and also reduce the mass, which adding the eave has done. So that's not really a question in there, but I guess my question was, could you change that notch part, which Randy was just talking about?
Not very easily, I don't think. I mean, you'd have to revise the whole porch, I believe, right, Dan, with the overhang?
Revise the whole porch, to be quite honest, so
Yeah.
three-dimensionally, it's not gonna look good because you're gonna have a really low roof on a cape that's gonna look funny. So, I mean, again, it's
I just wanted to
I'm never
opinion.
gonna bring a beautiful colored rendering into a zoning hearing again in my life, but you're never gonna look at the house like that. I mean, you're looking at it so critically because you're directly face onto it.
No,
It's got, those are unique features that's gonna make the house look beautiful. I mean, it's gonna enhance that neighborhood. It's gonna be a beautiful house.
So my question was just, could that be turned back to what we liked the last time? And you've said no, and so that's.
I can't,
But,
obviously last time it's because it looked that way because of the shed dorm wasn't there.
right.
Right.
And, exactly, and we were trying to design it on the fly, and thank Paul Simple for saying, let's take a step back and get an actual design that we can look at, which we have. And so that was my question and my comments. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Lee, did you have any questions? All right,
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
we need a vote on that, Ginny?
Vote yes.
All vote yes?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, deliberations. Randy,
Well,
unless you wanna,
I'll pass on that.
okay, all right, deliberations, Ginny.
Well, I kind of did some deliberations before, but, so I don't think I have anything else to add.
Okay, Lee?
Well, I love the shed dormer. I am pleased with the way it looks from a traditional standpoint, and I am pleased with what it does for the mass of the house. It breaks it up a little bit, and I think it looks awesome. So, and I think it fits in well with a historic neighborhood, so I'm pleased.
Paul?
This is another one where we had extensive discussion from the board with respect to the appearance of the house and what needed to be done, and discussions about what the height was going to be on the second floor, and I know that there's an awful lot that went in all of that stuff. I think frankly, we've worked it over as much as we can in order to make it fit as well as it can. And we're dealing with a neighborhood which is very diverse in terms of the kinds of houses that it has up there. It is a historical area, but it's also one that has all kinds of different kinds of homes. And I think that this has gotten to the point where moving the garage and the driveway and taking into consideration the concerns of the neighborhood, they've done as much as they really could do to satisfy the comments that came from the board. So I think that we've arrived at a situation where it's not overall substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Dave, did you wanna chime in on this?
Yeah, I would agree. I think, I don't share Randy's concerns about the notch. I mean, really, it's just a slight extension of that roof to cover a porch. And a covered porch entry is something that's desirable, actually. So all things considered, I think you mean, and I missed the last meeting, and I come thinking, this really is much improved over what was presented the last time, and I think that, and I think that they've accomplished what we were seeking to accomplish, which was making it fit just a little bit better into the neighborhood, even though, as Paul says, there's diverse styles within the neighborhood. But I think this definitely fits the neighborhood. I think specifically making that change by putting that roof line across the front and changing the appearance of that dormer on the front made a very big difference in just kind of, okay, this fits. And that's my take on it, so, thanks.
Yeah, I'm pleased at the process, and, we've gone around and around and around. And the fact that the neighbors seem to be pleased with what happened, and I'm still mystified by we haven't had other people chiming in that live nearby, but that's okay. So, when I look at what's there now, and what's presented here, is this substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than what is there now? And the answer is definitely not. In fact, I think it's a plus. And I agree with Mr. Russell that once it's done, and this goes back to, as you know, Jamie, I gotta see stuff in 3D.
Right.
And it's important to me that we do that, because it eliminates some of these perceptions that we do and don't have. Anyway, so I will be voting for it. Paul?
I'll move to approve the application. I think we do need our standard conditions given this location. So I would say I would approve with a condition that all construction activity and vehicles shall be contained on site or at a neighboring property with the permission of the property owner. Between June 30th and Labor Day, there would be no exterior construction would be allowed. No work would be permitted on the weekends, and construction activity would be between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. only.
That's fine, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yeah, no, Randy, I need a second on Paul's motion.
Second.
Okay, so we need a vote. Jenny?
I vote yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes, that's a unanimous
Thank you very
decision.
much.
Thank you for your patience. And congratulations. And I think we'll take a 5-minute break before we go on. I need a walk.
Yeah, well, you're trying to get the front door, it needs to stand out, it needs to be prominent, and the porch is a good thing.
doing very well on time, when you think about it. And look at what we got out of our hair today. We got Broadcliff out of our hair, Cranberry Lane out of our hair, Homestead, I hope. Well, he said they don't want to spend the money. Riley said to me, to go to a third floor, and there's no guarantee they're gonna get the view. They only want the view. I mean, they've owned it for what, 20 years? Okay. Yeah. So you're around all morning? Yeah, I don't know. I won't be early tomorrow, I know that much. But I'll be there.
Clearing the decks can't be a good sign, huh, Dave?
I think it is.
I might as well hand out my stuff while we're waiting.
It feels like we've been here longer than 1 hour and 40 minutes. Yeah, I would think you're right. I would think you're right. This is okay. Thank you.
Everything that you said, ready to go.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much. That's good. Yeah, that's good though. It's not a bad thing.
That's why you're on this board. Okay, we're back, gang. Back to work. So, okay. I'm shocked. Okay, all right. So, Sarah, if you would be so kind as to read whatever number this is. How about 23-055?
Application number 23-055, GHW Realty Trust, care of James M. Norcross Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 739 Kroll Road, also shown in the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 12I, Block 6, Lot 1A. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and detached barn, the construction of a new dwelling. The existing dwelling is nonconforming in that it is located 23.9 feet from the road where a 40-foot setback is required, and 20 feet from the northerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The existing barn is nonconforming in that it is located 19.4 feet from the southerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The proposed dwelling will conform to road and abutter setback requirements. The existing building coverage is 2,942 square feet, and the proposed building coverage is 2,888 square feet, where 2,850 square feet is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 123.04 feet of frontage where 150 feet is required, and contains 43,539 square feet where 60,000 square feet is required in the R60 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the Protective Bylaw. This was continued from July 13th, 2023.
Good afternoon, Jamie Norcross representing Damon Wirtanen. Damon is here with me today. Thad Eldridge, the surveyor for the project, as Mr. Litchfield mentioned, is participating remotely for any questions, technical questions that we need for Thad. So I'm sure you're all familiar with this property, driven by it many, many times over the course of time. As my office is down the street, coming and going, I've been driving by it the last 15 years and seen it sort of not change very much, but it's sort of fall into more and more of a state of disrepair. So the property consists of an existing 4-bedroom dwelling with a large detached garage. The original part of the house is the section located closest to Kroll Road that you see from the street. As you go back away from Kroll Road, there were additions that were done over the course of time, And the most recent section of the house is the very back, the largest section that's kind of a hodgepodge. It actually has 2 garages, one on the basement level, one on the first level, and then there's actually a second floor apartment. So sort of like the house that Jack built, as my mother-in-law tells me when she sees properties like this. So, and there is also the large barn that's on site that I think was also used to house cars from the previous owners. That isn't historic. That was built, I think, within the last 50 years or so. But that's also on site and quite a large structure. The property is owned by the Morgan family for over 50 years. At some point in time, it just was not maintained anymore. And so it fell into a state of, I would say, complete disrepair. As bad as it looks from the outside, as somebody who's had the unfortunate luck of being inside it 3 or 4 times, it's even worse on the inside, I can tell you from walking around there. So it's in very, very poor condition. That being said, Damon bought the property last April. And a couple of his friends drove by right after he purchased it. And I think they immediately questioned his sanity. But that being said, Damon saw the potential for this property. And he'd been looking for a property in Chatham for quite a while. And he was looking for a home for his family that he could create that would, he calls it a generational home. He's going to touch on that a little bit during his part of the presentation. And so he has a large family, he has an extended group of friends, and he wanted a house that he could have down here that could be a gathering place for years to come. Damon's in the process of downsizing to a condominium in Boston, so this would be the location where family parties, holidays, everything else, people are going to gather. And so that's what he envisioned with this acquisition. And so he was able to sort of see past the current state of affairs over there and saw a lot of potential in the building, and well, not the building itself, but a lot of potential in the site. And in doing his initial diligence for the property, Damon looked at with his architect, you know, despite what you see on the exterior and interior, could it be renovated? And quickly the opinion was formed and was justified with a review by a structural engineer that's really past the point of saving. And so a new structure was going to be required for Damon moving forward if he wanted a home that he could have for 20 plus years to use and enjoy with his family. Damon's going to touch on some of the design characteristics that went into the design that was created by his architect and some of the thought process and personal anecdotes in terms of his family and use of the property that he foresees going forward. I will just touch on nonconformities quickly. So in terms of existing nonconformities, the property is non-conforming as this side of Crowell Road is actually R60. And so while the lot size is over 43,000 square feet, 60,000 square feet is required. It only has 123 feet of frontage, which is actually usually quite a bit, but in an R60 zone, 150 is what's required. The existing dwelling is non-conforming as it's located 23.9 feet from Crowell Road, where a 40-foot setback is required. The structure is also non-conforming as to the north and west lot lines. The barn is non-conforming as it's about 20 feet from the lot line where a 25-foot setback is required. The building coverage is non-conforming as it has over 2,900 square feet of coverage where 2,850 square feet is the maximum allowed. I would just explain one thing on the lot. And I don't know, is the pointer over there by chance? I don't see it.
Hey, are you looking for the stick pointer or
No,
the light?
the light. All right.
Mark, is that something that you guys have back there? Here we go. Mark to the rescue. Thank you.
Oh, it's new. That's nice. Boy, okay. So, Sarah, if you could do the, I think it's the first plan that Thad had, or maybe if this can zoom out. The existing, I think it's the very first plan. Okay, so I've never seen a lot like this before, but, so the lot is this property right here. It's the little strip right here that you see that connects to this piece back there. Why that was done by David Morgan in the 70s, I have no idea, but that's the way it exists today. So just to clarify, when I say it's 43,000 square feet, that's that and that, but really the primary site, the building site that we're talking about is about 21,000 square feet up there, just to clarify in terms of when we're talking numbers. The proposed structure, the good news on that is that it's going to meet all setbacks. And in terms of coverage, the intent is that it's going to be below the 2,850. So that'll be in compliance with the overall building coverage as opposed to the existing structure. You'll see within the package that we submitted on Thad's plan, he has a little notation where he added some square footage in case there's a deviation during the construction process, such that we wouldn't have to come back and ask for a variance that we may not get. So every intent is for it to be less than that, but that's just a little bit of built-in wiggle room in case there's something pops up during construction. So with that, I'd turn it over to Damon to talk about the design.
Sure. So, yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, so there's, when I first purchased the home, I immediately sat down and we went kind of on Google Earth with my architect team and really wanted to, I've done this a few different times, so, it wasn't my first time doing it. And immediately fell in, what I loved about the lot was the natural grade, right? So from front to sloping down to the back was my initial really, my turn on, because I felt it could be an easy walkout backyard. From a technical standpoint, we wanted to make sure that the home met the setbacks, met the building envelope, okay? And most importantly, the ridge height, right? Because the ridge height was gonna really determine the design. And I guess I'm getting a little hypersensitive to this because going with historical, they've really asked about the design. And unfortunately, right, like I'm 6'3", my son's a college basketball player, he's like 6'5", his friends are like 6'8", my daughter's a collegiate swimmer, they're like 6 feet, like we're tall, right? So I feel like, a gambrel is like turned into this, it's for me to get as much second floor height in these bedrooms, right? Like my son would be standing in the middle of the room and he'd be banging his head off the sides of the walls. The rooms are really all like 13 by 13. They're not big rooms. So the gambrel was chosen because it maximized the second floor heights, right? We get 97 inches up there from wall height. Now, that allows us to stay under the 29 foot of the ridge. We can bring the ridge down 6, we can bring the wall height down 6 and bring it down a little bit, but I'll talk, because I think streetscape was extremely important to this, because we didn't want this thing to look like a sore thumb on this road. And again, Cape Cod Chatham, I've been in this area for 25 years. I've stayed pretty much everywhere down here. And the shingle style look to me is very important. The seashell driveway is very important to me. This is gonna look like a Cape Cod house, okay? And it's gonna, I'm hoping, achieve and meet all your requirements, right? But also meet some of my requirements, being the second floor. So design to fit the neighborhood. This is probably the most important piece to this, because this is where we did the most work. And Thad was obviously extremely valuable here. His team was extremely valuable because we needed to get the exact heights. Because again, the northeast corner, the right front of the property, sits 13 feet above on a diagonal to the left rear southwest side, okay? So think about that from the street. You get a 13-foot drop of just natural grade that's there today. Not moving any earth, it's just the way it is. And everything behind, no one sees anything, it's all conservation, right? So I've got complete privacy in that backyard. So the idea was set the house as far back as we could, which we set the main house back 70 feet from the road. The ridge line of the home is 100 feet back. Now, this is important because on the right front of the property, that's gonna seem at about 26 feet because we're depressing the home 3 feet down into the land, okay? Because, so rather than, when you drive by Crowell, that's not gonna look like a big home because it's gonna be set from a roadway, it's a 3% down to a 2%, down to a flat courtyard. It's gonna look, and it's actually like 35 to 40 feet of driveway, which will be pretty, heavily landscaped up front. So you're gonna have to go down and in to that courtyard. So the house is gonna be down again into that natural flowing piece of land. So the left front of the garage is gonna be at 40 feet, which will meet the setbacks. 41, I think, is where we've landed. Again, the 70 feet back on the main house, 100 foot back on the ridge. And then you know, your backyard is gonna be just, you know, perfect because the sides will be built up, but you'll get that natural walkout basement because I don't even have to, like, at pool level or grade level, we're gonna be at the exact grade that we are there today, will be the deck of the pool. We're at 26. So there's really not a lot of moving of earth going on. The lot just fits, but, you know, I think, again, the streetscape was really important. I just didn't want, you know, something that really stood out like a sore thumb. So those were my points. Those are the setback pieces I really wanted to hammer in. And again, big part of it, and thanks to Thad and the team, because without really getting the numbers rock solid, you know, the architect and the team really couldn't, you know, put the design to work to achieve, again, that natural grade off the main road into the courtyard to get it, to make it feel like it's down and away, not, you know, up in the air.
Great. Thanks, Damon. Moving on to the criteria. Number one is adequacy of the size of the site in terms of size for the proposed use. We believe the size is adequate for the proposal. As I mentioned, the proposed structure will meet all sideline setbacks. It will meet the height restriction, and the intent is for it to be under the allowed building coverage. It certainly will be less than the total building coverage of the two existing structures. As Damon mentioned, the proposed pool and outdoor recreation areas in the rear will be located in an area that minimizes impact on neighboring properties as is behind the home and is surrounded with significant vegetative screening that just currently exists on site. Damon also proposes to plant additional vegetative screening along the north and south lot lines. So you'll see the little plants, well, I shouldn't say plants, the trees that are here and here for some additional screening. Compatibility of the size of the proposed structure with neighboring properties. We spent some time on this, on number two, because first of all, trying to figure out what exactly is the neighborhood for this property is an interesting question, because Crowell Road's kind of unique on its own because you have little pockets of homes, then you have a bunch of open space, then you have the school, then you have commercial, and then you have some more pockets of homes. So it's difficult. It's not your traditional neighborhood. It's a little bit of an outlier, especially this house because it's 2 lots down from Orleans Road. So we sort of looked at the neighborhood as it's the area of that area on Crowell Road. It stretches over into Northgate, which is the subdivision behind this home. That is quite close, some of the homes in there, sort of down to Parliament Drive, which is another subdivision, and then over onto Orleans Road, some of the properties on there. That's all, I think, sort of the neighborhood for this house, just because it's not set in your standard setting where it's easy to define the neighborhood. So in looking at the homes in these areas, it's really a mixture of various sizes and ages. There are 3 homes in the area of Damon's property that are of around the same vintage in terms of age. There's one next door. There's actually on each side, one house down, and then there's 641 Crowell Road, which is that house that sits up on the hill where they're putting a pool in now, and that's an older home. But the rest, Crowell Road, from reviewing the assessor's records in this area, are all 1970s era homes. Northgate was a subdivision that was built in the 80s. Those homes are 80s, 90s, or later. Parliament Drive was the 1990s, and then the homes on Orleans Road are a bit of mixture. You have some older homes, you have some newer homes, specifically directly across from the entrance of Crowell Road, 720 and 726 Orleans Road. Those are newer structures. One of them is a newer structure on the water on that side. Again, the proposed house is a large structure. There's no denying that, but we believe it is still compatible with the neighborhood. To the extent that it's larger than the neighboring properties, the size is minimized by siting the house well back from Crowell Road, as Damon mentioned. So the 40-foot setback that we meet is for the garage right here. The existing house is 20, so it's up in here. The main house, which is the bulk of the property, is at 70 feet right here, which Damon mentioned. So in terms of where the main visual impact, it's being sited quite a ways back from Crowell Road, and we think that mitigates the additional height and massing from that structure. Number 3, extent of proposed increase in nonconforming nature of the structure or use. There is no increase in the nonconforming nature of the structure or the use, and as I mentioned, unlike the existing structure, this house will comply with all setbacks. Suitability of the site, including but not limited to impact on neighboring properties or on the natural environment. We believe the site is suitable for the proposed demolition and rebuild. There'll be no negative impact on neighboring properties. It's outside the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, and again, the properties and the construction process will ensure there's no negative impacts on neighboring properties. Impact of scale, siting, and mass on neighborhood visual characters, including views, vistas, and streetscapes. Again, this is another one, as Damon mentioned, that we spent quite a bit of time reviewing and thinking about, and he worked on with his architect and Thad in terms of coming up with a design. Again, the main points I would emphasize for this, it's a larger structure, there's no doubt about that. The structure that's there now and the barn aren't small either. I mean, the front section looks a little bit smaller from Kroll, but as it extends back, it's pretty large, as is the barn. But the setbacks are gonna help mitigate that feature and avoid a situation where you feel as if the structure looms over the street. Secondly, as Damon mentioned, the lot naturally slopes down as it moves away from Kroll Road. So the grade of the house to be built, the grade where the house is gonna be built is lower than the grade at Kroll Road. This again minimizes an impact, or any impact from the additional height and massing of the structure. I think it's different from a lot of homes you see where it's built on a mound, and that just emphasizes the height. This house is not being built on a mound. It's really being built down as much as it can. There's a house diagonally across the street from my office on the corner of Kroll Road and Kendrick Harvest Road. It's a beautiful house, white home with, I think, red shutters, but that sits on a big mound in front, and it's a very attractive design, but it effectuates this looming feature. Here, we're not gonna have that feature, because this is below the grade at Kroll Road, which is going to reduce the feeling of any massing. And the fact that it's set so far back also alleviates any concern with that it's going to loom over the street or change the characteristics of this neighborhood in any negative fashion. Number 6, compatibility of the proposed use with neighboring uses, single-family dwelling in a single-family residential neighborhood, and therefore compatible. Methods of sewage disposal, source of water, and drainage. The property is currently serviced by a cesspool, and Damon has applied with the Board of Health to install a new IA septic system. So we see that as a benefit, both to the groundwater and the environment as a whole. Property is connected to town water, and all storm water will be retained on site. Number 8, impact on traffic flow and safety. We don't see any negative impact on traffic flow and safety. There's sufficient parking on site for all vehicles. Number 9, noise and litter. We don't see any issues with noise and litter. 10 is adequacy of utilities and other public services. Adequate utilities will be in place to service this process, and 11 and 12 are not applicable. So just to quickly summarize, we think that a lot of work went into the design. We understand it's a change from what's there now. We understand it's a larger structure. But we think with a lot of the features that Damon mentioned, that I mentioned, I think we mitigate from that. And I think it's a structure that I believe there's 2 letters in support from neighbors. We haven't heard from any neighbors who are objecting or have any concerns with the project. They've been universally in support from the folks that Damon have spoken with about it. Sort of half kidding, I guess, part of what we thought about is anything's an improvement from what's there now, I suppose, for the neighbors. So I guess they're happy that Damon has taken the charge of this property and is willing to do something with it, since it sat there in such a state for so many years. So, but that being said, again, I think we meet the criteria, and I think you can find it's not substantially more detrimental. Thank you.
Okay, there's no one here, and there's no one on Microsoft Teams, so.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. One feature I forgot to share. We have a 3D video of the property that we can put on the big screen for you.
Can I add one comment before we do this? After seeing this, thank you, because this would have changed things probably midstream. Thad has been pushing me to put the IA system out in the front of the home, and I was pushing it the back for the natural grade, so I wouldn't have to use a pump. But if I use that back left corner, looks really low off that bridge, off the deck, not the bridge. It looks like a bridge now. So the back left corner, southwest corner will not look like that, because that is gonna change that to move the IA system out to that left, this front area out in front of the house, which it does make the most sense because it's gonna give it the easiest access as well for cleaning and out, et cetera. So,
I'll just highlight when you show me the way back through. I think it goes down. So this gives you more of a eye-level view of the property from the front. Some of the vegetation mixed in. This is the pool recreation area in the back and the walkout basement that Damon was describing. I think the septic system he's speaking about would be changes over in here, Damon, is that right?
correct, yeah,
Okay.
we just
Yeah,
wanted
so it won't affect the building at all, but just some changes in the site work. And and Damon and his architect were kind enough to put that together, which I think is, I agree with the chairman, it's very helpful to see a lot of times what it looks like on more of a 3D level as opposed to just flat on the paper. Is, in terms of the siding, that's not what the siding is going to look like, correct? It's going to be, the details for the shingles and whatnot aren't shown
it'll
on
be,
here.
yeah, it'll be the Maybeck bleached shingles with the Maybeck roofing shingles.
Just so you didn't think he was going to have flat gray wall there, that's all, but. Thank you, Sarah, very much.
Could I add a comment before we go to questions?
Sure.
Thad Eldridge here. David Morgan, the owner of the property for many years, was a collector. He acquired this property. It had less than 20,000 square feet, and then he collected different pieces that were added onto it. So that's what gives it its unique shape. When the development was going on nearby, David was able to acquire that 3-foot strip and the really unbuildable piece of land that's so far out and so close to that creek. So that's where we get the unique property. And if there are more technical questions, I'm happy to answer them.
He was a collector, all right, of a lot of things.
Thanks, Ted.
Yeah. Okay, that was great. That was great. So, now, I don't see anybody here to speak in favor, so I'll read the correspondence. First of all, this is from Christina Bassett, who writes for the Historical Commission. On September 8th, the CHC heard this application in July and found the home to be historically significant and opposed a 1-month demo delay that expired August 17th. The commission was hoping by imposing the delay that the owners would consider changing the style of the home from a gambrel to a more Cape-style house, in keeping with the neighborhood and saving the front part of the historical structure and incorporating it into the new design. Then we have a note from Judith Giorgio, health agent, on 6/27. I've reviewed the plan to demo and rebuild. They are proposing a new 5-bedroom dwelling. This will be an increase in flow and would require the installation of an IA septic system with approval by the Board of Health. The buildable upland is, looks like minus 21,000 square feet, not plus or minus. And then there's a note from Robert, and I believe his last name is Berg with an H at the end, 750 Kroll on September 12th. For the past 30 years, I've been in a butter, living diagonally across the street at 750. During this entire time, the property at 739 has been an eyesore, having grown worse with each passing year. I've seen the 3D rendering of the new home being proposed, and am totally supportive of the plans as presented. This project is a much needed and most welcome improvement to the neighborhood. In summary, I urge the board to approve the plans for the construction as submitted. Then we have a note from Jeff Bernard, 751. On September 12th. I am writing to express my unequivocal support of the proposed design located at 739. I moved here 2 years ago, and I firmly believe this new home will be a welcome addition next door. I have personally reviewed the plans for the future development and can attest that it is both in good taste and follows suit to the charm and style of our coastal New England community. And that's the extent of the correspondence. I don't think there's anybody here or on NICMASAR teams that wants to speak either against it or has a specific question. So let's go to questions from the board. Paul?
Jamie, just to be clear, I'm looking at the Chatham maps online, which is the assessor's, route, and it shows 739, but really 739 consists of a parcel that is also behind 725.
The assessor map is wrong. It should
Yeah.
be, yeah, it doesn't show that little sliver and then the connection to that, I don't know, what, a trapezoid, I guess, maybe if my geometry. That odd-shaped parcel in back is actually part of
It's
it.
showing the trapezoid as being part of 725, but it isn't.
That's correct, it is not.
Was he just attempting to try and get up to a 44,000 acreage or
We don't
1
know.
acre lot, or?
It's not buildable back there. We don't know what he was doing. Somebody was asking maybe if there was some sort of, I think the association has rights to Lover's Lake, so maybe he thought he would get, by buying the lot, he'd be part of Northgate. I don't know. It's kind of a mystery, but.
Mr. Morgan was a mystery, Paul.
Ah, okay.
His house was a real mystery.
Yeah.
In the dining room, where the table would be, he had hardwood floor all around, and then the center, just plain old pine. It was underneath where the table was, and he just covered it up with a rug. I mean, that's the way he was. There's no rhyme or reason to any of it.
I don't see any figures comparing the size of this house to any of the other houses that are on Kroll Road. You know, the 750 or 730, it's 722, 714, and so forth. We often see those kinds of numbers.
I didn't include a chart with.
Jenny, do you have that, or do you have the info on number of stories?
Yeah. So I don't have the chart, but there are about 47 houses on Kroll. And I agree with you, Jamie, the front end, it's eclectic. That's more commercial, where you are, the southern end. Lot of raised ranches, but that northern end, there are several historic homes in that end, including your property that was before it's demolished. So of the 47.
Oh, Jenny, it's not really your turn.
I'm sorry. Of the 47, the
I
answer.
was just trying to get the info for Paul.
Okay,
That was
of the
my-
47, about 98% of them are 1 or 2, 1.5 story houses.
We'll come back.
Okay, well, so I didn't see that. When I look at the depictions of this house and the landscaping and so forth in the video, it looks huge. And it seems as if the your ridge elevation is 62.1 and the max is 62.3. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the building height is 29.8. Is that vis-à-vis a standard of 30?
Sorry, you mean?
A max of 30?
The max is 30 and we're 29.8. That's correct.
And I understand the gambrel gives you more height in terms of people 6 feet tall trying to get under it, then I can understand the need for that. But those are my questions. I'm a little concerned about that.
Randy?
So I'm glad I'm not going to be the only skunk at the picnic here. Thank you, Paul. So my question is very simple. I know you had a little rough time at the historic, and you kept your composure, and I commend you for that. But you promised them that you'd consider a more traditional look. You promised them.
Right.
So I'm not going to say if you did or you didn't, because I'm going to assume that you did. And I'm wondering, what happened with that then?
It's almost like a full redesign. It is a full redesign, not almost. And to make it a true cape, right? So the whole home would have to come in. It would, again, we knew this from the start, so because this is where we started it here, because we were originally gonna do all full dormers off the back and work the cape. The problem with the cape and the height of 30, you can only go so high and so wide, or it starts looking really, you can't get any width out of the house. You'd have to keep it to pretty narrow.
You can do those shed dormers that we all know and love.
No, that's fine, that works out great, but the actual square footage now we would take about 1,000 square feet off the house.
May not be the worst thing, but I'll leave it at that for now.
I guess, oh, sorry, man, just to answer your question, Damon did go back and talk to his architect, and we had several conversations about the redesign, and as he said, the gambrel is just, he feels is important for his.
And she, she's designed, thousands of homes, and we basically looked at capes that would, just getting inside them and looking at them and what it would do from all angles. So it wasn't something we'd neglect, didn't.
I told you, I assumed that you did it. I
Yeah.
knew you did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dave?
Well, I have some concerns along the same lines, probably, so I'm just going to ask you again. I mean, you said that, a gambrel was allowed for more headroom on the second floor, essentially. And I'm just wondering, I mean, at a certain point, as far as headroom on the second floor, and you're comparing a design like the gambrel to maybe more of a cape style or a gable style building, it becomes more about the amount of floor area that has the height versus, other, you lose some floor space perhaps in changing the design.
Exactly.
I mean, I would agree with you, probably, if you were to look, this would you probably need to look at a redesign all the way, look it all over. So, I guess that's not a very good question, but that's part of my concern. I want to work with you on this, but I am concerned, I have some concerns about the massing.
Well, I think, again, from a massing standpoint, I'm in full agreement as well, because the last thing, I don't want this to be an overbearing house, right? So one of the things that we can absolutely do, and we modeled it out, the current wall heights are 97 inches, right? All along the second floor. We can bring those down to 90 inches, all right? Which effectively brings the ridge, keeping all the same lines on the ridge, on the roof lines, all the rafters would stay exactly the same. So the ridge can come down effectively, 7 inches. So now you're at, just at 29. The beauty of that 29 from that northeast corner, it's gonna look like 26 because it's so far down into the property from that corner and on being actually, like, for example, driving a car on the corner across. So it's gonna even make it look smaller.
Okay, well, that's a consideration. I have to think through a little bit more about, some of this other parts. So I also notice, and as part of that you've got 8'11" ceilings on the first floor, which seems to be sort of de rigueur these days, as Jane has said. So you have significant ceiling heights on the first floor as well. Are you willing to look at that in terms of bringing the ridge down?
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Okay. So, I just noticed, and again, this is so in the form of a question, is this correct? What I notice is that the existing first floor elevation is 37.3, and the proposed first floor elevation of the new buildings is 37.1. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, that's
So that causes me some confusion, because then you talked about, well, you're going to set it down the hill and incinerate. the first floors are at virtually almost the same plane as the existing and proposed. And, by my calculations anyway, by the ridge elevations that are shown on the site plans, the ridge, as you're proposing it, is going to be 7.2 feet higher than the existing ridge. So and then my question to Thad is, in the existing ridge, which, is it the barn in the back, or I'm not the barn, the separate barn, but is it the garage in the back or the front of the house that's the ridge elevation of 54.9?
We have provided Jay a revised plan. The 54.9 is actually above the front part of the house. And I am calling up the plan now. Sorry not to have it right away.
That, while you're looking, I think it's about 3 feet higher, Dave, on the very back.
Well, again, I'm just going by the elevations that are on the plan.
No, I understand, yeah, I think Thad had explained to me the other day that, and he'll hop in here, but that number is the front of the main house.
Correct. 54.
Yes, that's correct.
So what you, so there's a different elevation for the garage in the back, ridge height? And what is that?
That, I think that's the 27.5.
Yes, it's 27.3 is the building height of the existing, and the ridge elevation is 60.1. And that's the section in the back.
So the ridge elevation there is 60.1?
And that's over the garage apartment, the funny kicker in the back.
And that's the same ridge elevation that you have for the proposed new structure? And is that correct?
No, the proposed is 62.1.
62.
So 2 feet difference.
Okay. Okay, thanks. I think that's just gonna help me to, it's gonna help me visualize. I'm
Yeah.
trying to visualize this thing, and these are some of the ways. Now, so the other part then, in terms of visualizing, is you did provide us, thank you, with gross floor area figures for the existing and proposed. But as Paul noted, we don't have any comparative anywhere in the neighborhood. So that, we just have to guess at that. The other thing that I think is, that comes to be somewhat of a concern is, for me, again, is that when I do look at when I look at first and second floor things, that's where I see, so the existing second floor area now in the existing buildings is about 1,256 square feet. And in your new proposal, on second floor, you're getting up to 2,459 square feet. So that's part of this, we're seeing. So anyway, those are a few questions, a few concerns to us. I don't have any other right now, Dave, thanks.
Okay, Jenny?
I had a similar question to Randy's. I watched the historic hearing, but two of them actually, you had June and July. So, one of the commissioners specifically asked the question, I see the proposed, I'm not crazy about it, would you consider an expanded, a more traditional cape? And in the hearing, Mr. Mortanen, you said you would, and in fact, I think in one of the hearings, Jamie, you said, I'll talk to him and we'll consider redesign, and you have, so thank you for, that was one of my questions, where is that redesign? Because I was looking forward to seeing that. Because I think this house is certainly very attractive, it's a lovely house, but it is, in that part, that historic part of that, it's not technically a neighborhood, but it is in a way, that northern end of Kroll Road. And I know that the house that's coming down is really even not your choice. It's, but the historic, that is, I think that is important, that when you are replacing a historic property. I mean, that house was 1839, and it has historic elements that would be potentially important to incorporate in the new design. So I'm in favor of kind of a redesign, I'll just say that. But it's because I'm agreeing with Mr. Veach, the scale and the mass, I mean, at the maximum height, what that property has right now is a simple, unadorned house with very low footprint in the front. It's low height, it's 25 feet wide, and the garage, even though it's a big property, you mentioned that, Jamie, it is, the garage is set back 80 feet, and the barn is set back 90 feet, and there's a lot of property in between, so it breaks it up. Now, Mr. Rattana, what you've done, and I commend you for that, in trying to meet the setbacks, is pull everything together. It's now in the center of the property, and it's quite massive. Now, I am interested in your comment about, because it's so far back at 40 feet, it's not going to look like it's 30 feet tall. I mean, it's inches from the max. Can you describe?
70 feet is the main house.
He was speaking about the garage.
But the garage, okay.
Right, but we think that's a lesser, I guess, part of the structure in terms of size, of course. And
Okay.
it's facing you
With a
from a different
smaller
angle.
ridge.
Yeah.
So the house is what you're saying is going to be the 29.8, and the garage will be lower?
Correct.
Okay.
The garage has a dormer facing the street.
But you were talking quite a bit about that grade and how that drops off, and so the house is going to have the appearance of being lower than that because of the grade and because of the distance from the street. Can you quantify that a little more? Like, you're describing it, but it's, and I do appreciate the 3D, but I
So
still can't.
so if you think the northeast corner, the right front of the property, if you're standing on that grade level, you're at 29. I'm sorry, let me get the numbers down.
David, she's going to pull up the site plan.
Okay.
Maybe a little easier for you.
Thad, what is the corner, that's 39, correct? The right front of the property?
You're up in here.
Yes, the right front of the property is elevation 39.
39, so as you're coming down the road, and you're looking over,
From the north, okay.
coming down from the north side there, if you're looking over at the house, it's gonna be, we're down at like 36. So basically, when you get down to the middle of the property, at about 60 feet, you're pretty much on plane with kind of the courtyard and first floor grade. So, but with that whole right side being 2 to 3 feet higher in points along there, it should look, it shouldn't feel like it's up on a hill. It should feel, and then really the rest of it is just all built into that natural flow, which is that it's a 13-foot drop to the back of the house.
Okay, I'm going to have to ponder that too, because I still can't quite grasp how 29 feet.
Well, 3
30
feet is the
feet.
height of that, that's how, that's from
Right.
floor to grade right there on that countertop is 36 inches, I bet. So, I mean, that's, if I'm standing up on top of that and I'm, then you're standing on the floor. That's,
So you're saying from the street of Curl Road, looking down 70 feet, the house you're proposing that's 30 feet tall, or inches from 30 feet tall, will look 3 feet shorter? Is that what you're saying?
it'll give the appearance of being exact, well, rather than being at the full 30 feet, it'll look like it's at 27. It's kind of
Okay.
that's kind of the feel.
Okay. One question. I'm not familiar with the Maybach shingle. What is that?
It's a type of, it's the manufacturing brand.
Okay,
Maybach.
is it a cedar?
Yeah,
Okay, and the roof too?
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's, Maybach is, so they dip in bleaching oil so they come
So they don't,
ready to go, yeah.
and they gray more naturally or
Exactly.
whatever?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Lee?
If I could add, the building itself is 25 feet from the first floor to the ridge. The 30 feet is based on the grade plane, which is lower because of the walkout. So when you're looking at the face of the building from the front, you're looking at 25 plus your foundation, plus your the distance between the first floor and the TOF, so 26 and a half feet.
So that's the visual from, or the height as seen from Kroll Road, Thad?
Yes.
So that might help quantify, I guess, with that number.
Thank you, Thad.
Thank you, Thad. Lee?
I don't really have any new questions. I was concerned and was curious about the effort to look at a redesign as well. I do think that the house being set down is going to help a little, but it's still a question for criteria number 5, the streetscape, and the nature of the street and the other homes around, but that's not a question. But.
So, it sounds to me like the general impression is the house is too much mass. And the design is not necessarily what everybody's crazy about. Do you need to get more specific?
Oh, we'd love specifics, yeah, I think that
Okay.
would be helpful.
All right, so let's go back to, Dave, you mentioned some very specific ideas, and also in relationship to the design of the house and the mass of it.
Well, I was just commenting, I think what I was commenting that a gambrel is a particular style that is one way of dressing up a big or tall building. And there are other ways to do it, but they aren't necessary. I actually have never thought about how, the width of a building, Cape style versus gambrel, or what, the constraints are with respect to that. I just know looking, taking that drive and looking, along Crowell Road and that section of Crowell Road, I agree with Ginny. There are a few other older homes there. And I am a little concerned that this certainly was massing, but also as a matter of style. There isn't anything like this along there. And I'm torn, honestly, because I think it is a good-looking house design. But based on on our discussions today and the information we have and kind of scattering of it all, I'm not convinced that I could approve of this, because I'm not convinced that the argument about it looking lower, because it looks lower, it's going to look less jarring. I mean, it's going to look somewhat jarring in comparison to what's there, but we're not trying to save what's there. We don't want it to look jarring in respect to the other buildings in the neighborhood. Those are my only, and that's what I would say. So I wouldn't believe that I'm not sure. I mean, there is certainly now he's going to have there's site coverage requirements and things that they have to meet, and they were seeking to reduce that somewhat from the buildings they already have. But maybe I'm not going to try to design this, but maybe they can just look at other forms that might fit in with the building and meet the criteria of what he feels that he needs from it. I'm not sure, because I'm not sure that if we took it as proposed and dropped that by another foot, whether that's still going to meet the, for any of us. We don't want to go forward based on some of what we've been told today, and then have it all constructed and everybody's going, whoa, how did that happen then? And so we're trying to work together on it and figure out a way to somehow ensure that it fits better and meets your needs.
So I'm somewhat confused, right? So
Okay.
The bylaws of Chatham have set some pretty strict rules. So I'm very hopeful that everyone knows what a 30-foot ridge height line is, right? Because that's the maximum height in Chatham.
I'm sorry, go
So
ahead.
30 feet is 30 feet, right? It's probably the lowest height restriction in the state for a single-family dwelling. right? So it's very low, and I'm very confident that the way the house is sitting down in the land, and again, I can move it down a foot to bring it to 28 and 28.9. So, and that really doesn't, it doesn't hurt the first or second floors. But now you're at 28.9, which is a foot below what the Chatham zoning law is, right? So now I'm really not even close to the max.
So, yes, there's, and this is something that we do have to deal with. That we have that criteria, scale, setting, and mass, with respect to the neighborhood visual character. That's one of our criteria. So that's where we're coming from on that. I'm speaking for myself. That's where I have concerns. I'm not, you've proposed, and I don't have any, I think you've given yourself a couple of inches from the 30 feet, which is wise, given construction, plus vagaries of construction. So you're not going to the absolute max that you could with the structure, but you're a couple inches, 2 3/8 inches less. And I have no problem with that part. Where I'm having some problem is the apparent massing. And so the way you've chosen to do this, you've taken this buildings that are spread out, and you've increased the gross square footage, which, I'm not even saying you can't do that, or, we allow for that.
But reduce the envelope by 150 square feet.
Right, so maybe we're not getting there by reducing the envelope. You can, if you're saying, well, I'm going to, you constrained this way, so I can only go so much this way, how can I get what maybe you can come back with a design that doesn't put everything together in that same way and put it up and,
No,
I'm just saying.
yeah. Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think the word might be intensification. Because when you drive by there now, you look and you're like, looks like it could use some work. But, yeah, but you don't go, it doesn't belong with the neighborhood, you just say it needs work. But this is really intensification because you do meet, all the sidelines and all that, I know you do. But that doesn't mean ipso facto, we need to find that it's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, because it still can be, even though you meet the sidelines and all that, because it's just huge, and it would look great on like Strong Island Road. I think there's one in progress right now that looks very much like it. And it would look nice on any of the ocean streets, but it doesn't really belong in this neighborhood, and I think that's really the issue here, is that even if you lowered the height 2 feet, that style doesn't really belong with this neighborhood. And I think it would be, it would pop out at you and you'd say, something isn't right here, like Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other. So that's the way I see it.
Paul?
Well, I think those comments by Randy and Dave probably summarize what my thoughts were. I don't have the feel, I don't want to mislead you, I don't have the feel that if you drop it 7 inches, that's going to solve the problem. And I think that's basically what they're saying in a way too. But clearly we need more information about what else is in the neighborhood as part of the presentation, both in terms of size and volume and square footage, and look, so that we've got that information to go with.
Lee?
I think, I appreciate the fact that you wanted to meet all the setbacks, but maybe the new design doesn't have to. Maybe the new design is such that it's more of a traditional, more of a rambly cape, maybe to even utilize the barn and the site of the barn and make a really cool living space out of that as well. And I agree, it's like one big house kind of stuck in the middle, which is, just makes it look even bigger. So you've got a nice big piece of property. Maybe you use it. I mean, we would approve a house that doesn't meet all the setbacks. We do it all the time. Just a thought.
Jenny?
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. I'm struggling with criteria 2 and 5. It sounds like, Jamie, maybe you anticipated that because you really emphasized those two as well. And you did a very nice job, but the compatibility, the size of the proposed structure, I mentioned before, there are 47 homes on that street, and 98% of them are single or 1.5 story. So I can't reconcile that with what, I'm not saying you have to build a 1-story house, but it is a little too massive. I feel, Mr. Mortanen, like you didn't come out and say, I'm trying to maximize, but that's almost what you were saying when you were saying, we've done this, we want to go as high as possible, as wide as possible, take advantage of the grade. It's been very thoughtful, but you are trying to maximize that lot. Maybe it isn't, that home on that lot. Number 5, impact of scale and siting on the neighborhood visual character, including the streetscape. From a mass perspective, Dave Veach talked about it. It is 63% greater square footage than the current house, and the current house is large. All the pieces of it. It doesn't look large from the street because of the setbacks and the ramblingness that Lee talked about, and the garage is attached and it's sort of offset, and then the barn is back there. So it's quite a lot of square footage, and already, and you can't build on the whole lot, as Thad mentioned, but it does appear as though you're really trying to intensify and maximize a bit too much what you can build on in the attempt, frankly, and I commend you as well, to try to meet the setbacks, because that is something that we try to do. But as Dave Veach said, just because you meet those setbacks and the height requirement is 30 feet in the entire town of Chatham, and you're within inches of that on Kroll Road, it's too tall. And I appreciate that there's a grade drop off and it may appear lower and you've set it back, but I'm concerned about the mass and criteria 2 and 5.
When you roll it all together, it's two-pronged, I think, from what I'm hearing everybody say. Most up here want to see a redesign, meaning something other than the gambrel. Secondly, and the video, and thank you so much for that 3D. That's fantastic. That said volumes to me.
A lot of good it did us, Dave.
Well, no, it showed me that this is one massive structure, and that's why I asked you if you could do it. Instead of guessing. But it spoke volumes to me about the mass of it. So I would suggest to you that you withdraw and return. I can't see just pushing it forward with, let's extend you to, sometime in November. This might be a lot of work, a lot of time. So I would suggest
I do have a
withdraw.
question. Is there a square footage then? Because I'm really confused, right? Like this, I did exactly what, we spent 5-6 months doing this, right? Lots and lots and lots of money. Lots and lots of money on the 3D project. So we're doing a lot of work. And it's really coming down to the hypersensitivity I had to start the meeting, right? You just don't like my style. And the size, right, but I've done everything that you've asked me to do. I've met the ridge line, the setbacks, right? It's not even gonna look that big from the street. It's only 50 feet wide, right? So it's a pretty small house, visually, and being down, it's actually, the ridge is gonna be, there's a cape next door to me on the right, it's gonna be a lower ridge than his, coming across the street. So it's just confusing to me here on,
Well, let's back up a little bit. I mean, just because, let's take 30 feet. I mean, we have scenarios where frankly 24 is too many, or 22 is too many. It depends on each one. 30 is not a goal. It's not a goal, oh, let's get as close to that as possible. And likewise, square footage, or the massing of a house, as I think with Ginny, whoever was talking about, Strong Island or whatnot, we're charged with, is this detrimental to the neighborhood? And as Jamie touched on to begin with, what is the neighborhood? Each one of us has a different thought about what the neighborhood, it could easily be, if this was on the water, we had a member here, he always got in his kayak and he went and looked at it from the water, because that's what, it was important to him. I mean, Peter Acton, he was fantastic. Well, he's no longer with us, but anyway. So there's no simple answer to, okay, let's have a house of 40,000 square feet.
you're hitting exactly where I'm going with, I feel like I'm gonna be shooting into the dark, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. So it's,
do we have a design group then that
no, it's a process, as Jamie will tell you with his previous client today, and a much smaller scale. But that was 4 hearings. And was getting to it slowly, what, did this make sense, did that make sense? And at the end of the day, was it perfect? No. But it worked for the neighbors, it worked for the owner, and it worked for us. So there's no simple answer I can give you. I wish I could, Damon, but that's not possible. It's hearing what you heard here. Hey, is there a different style that makes sense? Can we reduce the mass of this? And not just with the idea, well, it's down the hill. It's taking that sort of, that.
But coming outside the 40-foot setback, and like where that other house is, and starting to get more up front at 20.
Yeah, we have streets around here like, how about Stage Harbor, where it's very important over there that the house not be too many feet back from the street because of the way, the homes were built over there. I think, Paul, we've had that in the past, and, Sarah, you know that, where, hey, that's way too far. Bring it back, bring it back. And it's making a good case for what is there. And Paul's point about comparing it with, square footage-wise, with your neighbors is very, very important. It's very important. So I don't think I can add any more than that at this time. And, you might want to try a couple of different things and come back. It's not an unattainable goal. It's just what's presented to us today isn't going to do it.
Okay. Thank you.
So I would suggest, Jamie, you withdraw and come on back.
Okay.
Yeah, we would ask to withdraw without prejudice, please.
What's that?
I'm sorry, we would ask to withdraw without prejudice, please.
Okay.
I'll move to grant the requested withdrawal without prejudice.
Dave Veach seconds.
Okay, we need a vote on that, Ginny?
Ginny votes yes.
All votes yes.
Yes,
Dave Veach.
And I vote yes, that's unanimous vote.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we adjourn, you'll notice on the menu for next time, I asked Sarah to put down, to have a discussion of the 3D business. To me, that 3D that we saw today told me so much more about that project. And so, is it something that we should make as part of our criteria for submission? Now, obviously, we don't want Mrs. O'Leary, who wants to put on a porch, to have to do that kind of stuff, but, so I just want you all to think about it. Is it important? And if so, is there some magic number, like, well, if you're gonna rip down more than 50% of that house, then we want to see a 3D. I mean, it could be that simple. Or, I don't think we want to get involved in dollars and cents, because who knows what dollars and cents are gonna be, but specific, like, okay, if you're gonna do that or that or that or that. So I just wanna have a discussion amongst us next time, bat around some ideas, and then we could have Sarah and Jay and Katie determine if it's legal, what we want to do or not. That would be the next step, but we can't have them, just guessing unless we can give them some specifics. So there's our homework, along with everything else. Anyway, we got an awful lot accomplished today, gang. We really did, and I'm very happy, myself. So how about a motion, Paul?
How about a motion to adjourn?
Dave Veach seconds.
We're all gonna vote. Ginny,
Judy votes yes.
Lee,
I vote yes.
Paul?
Yes.
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 And I vote yes, and the official time is?
5:49 PM.
All right.